host here, Lori and Tia, joining me today so we can talk about episode 52, Massive Imperfection. Just a friendly reminder that anything discussed in this podcast is not to be used as a diagnosis or a replacement for conversations with your own doctors, therapists, psychologists, or other medical professionals. I feel like Massive Imperfection kind of explains itself. We're going to talk a little bit about, how we strive always to be perfect. And I know there's only one person that ever lived on this earth who is perfect, and that's Jesus. And you can strive to be Jesus, but we are never going to be Jesus. So, but that's also coming from a faith background of faith. That's where we believe. You may have a different belief, but so we're going to talk about a little bit about that today and, see where we go. Lori, do you have anything you want us to hop in and share? Because I know you kind of brought this idea to us.
Well, as a self-professed diagnosed perfectionist, workaholic, need for every minute of every second of every day to be planned out and plotted out, and the list to be made. This is a mask. The mask of perfection that I wore probably a majority of my life. Unfortunately for me, to a suffocating place. I couldn't even breathe anymore. The pursuit of perfection is definitely one of the most difficult things. Along with that comes pride and need for humility, grace. I can have grace for others all over the place. I actually often get praised for my grace and mercy for others, but I don't tend to have it for myself. That's the
So what happens when you're living in that place of having to be perfect? What happens to those around you? And then, so that's, there's that. Then when you're showing them grace, but not yourself, how do you think that impacts those around you? Does it really help them?
No.
Or does it end up coming off condescending?
Oh, unapproachable, condescending. Yes, it comes off as all of those things. And as I said, a little prideful, and completely unintentionally.
Well, of course.
Like, I would not call myself a prideful person, except apparently I am.
We can also go with that.
Yeah, we're just gonna, we're gonna leave that for another time.
Thank you for your grace. I appreciate that. I'll show you some back in return.
Hey, call me out of my stuff. I don't care.
No, it really was very suffocating for me. So, and one of the things I really kind of wanted to identify is we come by the pursuit of perfection. I would say pretty naturally. It is baked into, built in, the culture that we live in promotes it on a daily, minute to minute basis. It is a part of who we are as Americans. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, suck it up, buttercup. What's the practice makes perfect? Does it really?
Mm-hmm.
Does it really make perfect? I don't know about that. Actually, I do know it doesn't. But So I think what I want us to do today is to kind of just tackle, well, what does that mean then? So can we actually be perfect? I mean, I feel like I've come to the realization that no, that's not actually attainable. Scripture says that, the world says that often, our bodies, our limitations, realities, all come into play there. Wow, I get so nervous talking about this. I've gone back to saying, okay, Lori, embrace the imperfectly perfect use of language there. Show yourself some grace.
Yeah. And I think kind of what we need to do first is talk about what standards is causing us to drive towards perfection, because I think all of us have that in some ways. There's always going to be something. I'm OCD. So there's certain things have to be a certain way. Most things I don't care about. As in, like, I don't care how the pens sit in the cup, but they need to be in the cup. Or, if I look at a poster and it's up there angled wrong, like I need to fix it because it needs to be straight. I need things in twos. I can't do things in odd numbers. That's just an OCD thing more so, but those things can start becoming, or have become for some people, those standards that drive us. And if it's not, then it's can lead to anxiety, panic, when it's not the way they think it should be. And then also, since we've had magazines and stuff, the airbrushed, photoshopped females on the cover of magazines are always what young women want to strive for. And they don't realize that underneath all of that photoshopping and editing and airbrushing are women with blotchy skin, zits, and folds and rolls all over the place. And so I feel like there's a lot of that. Thankfully, things have gotten better now. I mean, I'm really happy when certain places have a plus size woman on this cover, because that shows growth and making people realize that we're not all the same. I didn't grow up in a time when women were on the cover that were larger or plus size. Seeing somebody wearing a size 10 was like rare, even.
We were fat shamed.
Yeah, we were. And so it's really encouraging to see that now. That's even, but the girls of my era and younger, that's what they were striving for. They were like, oh, I have to look like this model, or I have to be like this person because that's the perfect image. And that's not the case.
Well, and now too, the fact that we are becoming culturally more aware. Yeah. I think one of my favorite companies that I feel is doing it right is, I think it's Dove. The ads that they have in their magazines and on TV have elderly, have people of color, all different kinds of color, people of different ages, people of different sizes, people with not perfect bodies. They're trying to show, hey, this is us getting raw and real. And here is what the world actually looks like. There's black and white and yellow and brown and white. There's everything. And there's different ages and there's different everything. And, you specifically mentioned women. Men get that too.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And when the guy doesn't have the six pack with the, like, really, you realize half of that is shading, right? That's not real. Even a real six pack doesn't look like that. So the gym, when we go to the gym, why are we going to the gym? You and I have talked about, I hate it Posted all over the gym are in our locker room are these signs that say cameras are not permitted. They break those rules all the time, because there is this obsession, this need to show us, right, in this raw, real moment, right? This is where I'm at. This is what I look like, and
Right.
the clothes and the bathing suits and the things and the conversations. There are so many reasons going to the gym is uncomfortable for somebody who's trying to embrace imperfections, for someone who's trying to say it's this fine balance. I want to engage in self-care. I want to take care of the temple, my body. I want to strive for healthy living so that I can be here to live that rich, full life with my grand littles and my sons and their loves and my friends and all of that. So how do we, and what happens when we get smacked with reality and that perfection really isn't attainable? But so what's the difference, I guess, between striving for healthiness and trying to be perfect, to be the model, to be
it's a
the
mindset.
okay. T, any thoughts on that? What do you?
Yeah.
So, a couple of things occur to me. We're talking about actually several things in one right now. So we're talking about body image. Okay.
Yep.
And we're talking about being a perfectionist, so how we do things. So I think there's a few things happening here. First, let's look at sociology. Sociology says that we are going to work really hard to be included into our group. We don't want to be rejected by our group. Because if we're rejected, we're isolated. If we're isolated, we're not safe. And a lot of people will say, well, that's really outdated thinking. We don't need to, we don't have to be in a group to be safe from the next village over from raiding us. We don't have to be in a group to make sure resources are available, food and warmth and stuff. And so, so back in the day, it was really super important to think like everybody else in your group and not to be rejected. But I do contend that we do still live in that. We do still have that. There's a lot of risk to not being included in your group or being rejected from your group. And it is still about safety. It is still about resources. They just look differently now. So there's that part of it. And then there's an even more personal part of it. What are you risking if you're not perfect? What are you risking if you don't fit what the society is saying is the norms at a more personal level? So, and then if you're not reaching the perfection you're driving towards, what's the outcome of that for you personally? And so, so there's that. And then, for me, I tend to celebrate my imperfections. I find that I like it most of the time, right? I'm going to have areas that are a little more sensitive to me, but generally, like I love arts and crafts. I love crocheting. I love sewing. I love beadwork. But everything I turn out has imperfections in it. I messed it up somewhere. And that's almost become my signature.
I love
So
it.
you guys were talking and I was thinking about that. Then I thought, well, that's the other side of the pendulum.
Right.
Okay, so seeking perfection can drive us to do better.
Yep.
But if we accept our imperfections to a certain, to a degree that's unhealthy, we stop striving to do better. And we just like settle into it. And what are we going to miss out on at that point? So those are just some of the thoughts that have been floating around in this rattle trap up here as you guys were talking.
Well, and I like that you brought up, so we kind of started with the body, right? Especially women, but we tend to go there, the body morphia, right? But other ways within which I know the way that my home looks, the possessions that I have, the fact that we live in a technological race society right now, got to have the best. If it came out yesterday, then you better be standing in line, got to have the new watch, the new thing, the new car, the new house, the when we've joked in previous episodes and different things, and we joke within mine and EJ's odd couple relationship that we're very, very different.
Yeah.
I care very much how my table looks, where the silverware sets, where the glasses are. Like I can't, I have tried. I've tried to just it was funny though. I'm getting better. Like I ate the last piece of pie out of the tin. Did you see that last thing?
Oh, I saw it. I was just thinking I was walking into a twilight zone.
So I totally ate the piece of pie out of the tin. I was so tired and I just didn't get. I was like, I can't. I just want the pie.
What was it? Oh, so we go to Papa Murphy's once in a while, and they have those it's like 10 meatballs and sauce that you bake like in the oven or the microwave. And so she will literally take them out of the pot, put them on a plate, and give them to us. I'm like, Lori, save a plate and just give me the tray. I don't care. I will eat out of the container. I mean, I don't want to do another dish. I want to do the bare minimum. I'll even eat off a plastic fork just so I don't have to do dishes. And she's like, oh, we need to do this. And she won't drink out of bottles. The other day, I was sitting there and I'm like, did you refill that water bottle with tea? She goes, yeah. I'm like, she's like, well, this was full. I was like, oh my God, what Twilight Zone have I moved into or I'll suddenly landed in? Did I miss a turn and go through a Stargate to an alternate dimension?
Right. So but I think it's good to challenge. What are you hiding from?
Oh, so much.
I know you. I know that when there's certain situations and circumstances, yes, you have to have everything in its place. You have to be the perfect hostess. You have to do this. You have to do that. But you peel that away, and that's not who you are.
No, it's not. It's not. And that's I'm trying to learn to embrace that and to be who I was authentically and creatively made, I I'm trying to not just sing in the shower or at karaoke to a song that I know really well. I'm trying to I was in the car the other day with my other caregiver, and he has a beautiful voice, and so does my roommate. I'm kind of a little more like Garth Brooks and Shania Twain. I don't think either one of them have the best voice, but they're amazing entertainers. I feel a little more like that. I can entertain. I can, I can carry a note. I'm not tone deaf.
But I know my inability to.
right. And so I'm definitely an entertainer. I'm never gonna win American Idol. I'm never gonna be Whitney Houston, who I adore. That's not me. So I found myself sitting in the car the other day, and there was a song that came on that I absolutely love. And I started to crack as I was singing it. And I stopped. I stopped singing. And then I was like, but you love this song, just sing. So I just started singing again. And I actually saw my caregiver, he actually kind of smiled. And I think he was, because normally if I start to crack, if I start to falter, I'll just stop, whatever it is. I'm not going to push through. But I did in that instance. And I feel like it it's just one of those little ways. I was tired the other day. I knew that I didn't have any extra energy. So what was the harm in eating the piece of pie out of the tin? Of course, I felt like my grandmothers were rolling in their grave, my mother along with them.
But I think that's what we're talking about, though, because we were like, my grandmother that lived with my mom and dad and I for some years grew up in the 20s and 30s, where a woman was proper and she drank out of a teacup, and women didn't do math and women didn't do science in that era. They learned how to sew and crochet and knit because that's what they were told to do. So then they're trying to force that onto us, not in a sometimes bad way, because that's how they felt that I should be raised. But my parents are like, she can learn what she wants to learn. If she wants to learn it, she will. And now I can think back to times where I'm like, man, I wish I would have let my grandmother teach me this. But I've learned since then. I've learned now how to crochet, and I've learned now how to, sew. And like you said, your parents are probably rolling in their grave that you're not, you ate out of a tin. But things are different. Life is different now. And I was even talking to somebody, I think you and I even brought up 150 years ago, there was nothing to do. You got up in the morning, you fed the animals on the farm or the ranch or the house you had. You made some buns for your meal. You had breakfast. Your kids went to school. They came home. There were no cell phones. There were no computers. They had a stick and a ball. And, that was they loved their life. And I know you shared in the past that, when you had a chance to go to Africa, and how happy these people were with their straw house and their, little bowl of rice. It's perception. It's we see, sometimes we say the phrase, keeping up with the Joneses.
Yes.
And I think we all fall into that pit sometimes because somebody has the better this, or they did this better. But I think it's funny, and we joke, we're like the odd couple, the female version of the odd couple, rest in peace, Matthew Perry. But it's not that I don't care how the table is set, but I wasn't raised that way. So if you want to go back after me and reset the table, okay. But I'm looking at it as an opportunity to learn something different. And sometimes I could take that in as, I did it wrong. I'm terrible. I should never do it again. And that should be Lori's thing. But that's not teaching me anything other than it's putting the wrong thoughts in my head. And then that can be Satan getting in there, because he doesn't want you to be happy or content or, have a positive outlook on life. But I could also look at it as, I'm going to learn. I need to learn. I might come into a situation where I have to know which is the salad fork and which is the butter knife, and, give a crap about, how I'm sitting, because that was what my dad always said. He's like, if you're a woman, you got to have to cross your legs and all this stuff. And I'm like, whatever. What were we doing the other day? And I was sitting there and I'm like, my legs, I sit like a man, I guess. My legs are spread out. I'm not comfortable sitting like a proper woman, but I'm comfortable how I'm sitting. And we went to an event. I'm like, yes, I was partially protesting because of you guys. Oh, you have to dress up. You need to wear a dress. I'm like, no, I don't have to. I'm not comfortable that way. I feel like I'm walking around looking like Shamu in a dress. I'm not gonna put myself and make myself feel uncomfortable to go do something. Had I stopped to think about certain things, it might have been a little different. But again, it's perception and how we learn and where we're raised. And I know we've talked about like generational traumas before. but it's that generational thing. Things have changed. How our grandparents and our parents were raised, those eras are different. And it's all
For
that
better
that's
or for
come.
worse, who knows?
Yeah, right. The stuff we know now, 100 years from now, our great grandchildren and grandchildren are going to be like, yeah, I can't believe my grandmother used to do that. They wrote on paper. Like they've probably never seen a piece of paper by, in 100 years. Yeah, so, and I guess kind of all that to say, I feel like we look at things and we want to honor the past by, like, I see it in you, Lori. You're like, you talk about it, like your grandmothers, you love spending time with them. You love doing holidays, and like your Thanksgiving was one of your favorite holidays because you learned how to cook with your grandmother and your great grandmother. And that was a great experience for you. So you want to honor that, and that's okay. You're allowed to have that. Um, and it's in those opportunities we can either, we talk like it's a choice. I can choose to learn, or I can choose to feel like I'm a failure. I'm choosing it as I'm going to learn something. I might tease and laugh and joke with her when she resets the table or something. But I hope, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I try to encourage you when you do things like that or say things differently, because I don't want you to not be who you want to be. And that's also what it is. Like, we want to be content and happy with who we are. And if the people in our lives are shaming us for how we're acting, that's not a good relationship to have.
I think for me, what I've learned and what I am learning every day is that when it becomes a stumbling block, when it becomes an obsession, an unhealthy pursuit, when it becomes the mantle or the mask that you're hiding behind because you're running from different things, or you're so afraid of the judgments and the perceptions, that's what we're talking about. That's what's unhealthy. There are ways to honor my grandmothers. It was really nice the other day. I dressed up for something, and I was wearing one of my grandmother's brooches.
Mm.
And this woman stopped and she goes, I miss that. I should wear my grandmother's, whatever. And it was this great piece of conversation that we had about our grandmothers. Right. And that was a way to do it in a way that wasn't pursuing perfection. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I just wanted to wear it because it reminded me of her. I was with my other caregiver the other day, and I noticed that all the jewelry that I was wearing that day, one was a necklace from my grandmother, one was a ring from my mother, and one was a ring from a grandfather of mine who had made it. And I love that all the jewelry that day that I was wearing was from somebody, within my family. And it's so great because I don't always have the best memories of my family. And I've shared a lot in this podcast and in my books and my writings and what I'm currently working on. It can be kind of dark. And I love that even in the midst of all that darkness, God can share with me something so beautiful and so timeless. And so that's that silver lining. That's that it's okay, Lori. It didn't have to all be perfect, but here's something good you can reflect back on, you can think on, and I'm so grateful for those. I love that. And when I do set a table, it is reminiscent of that time. My grandmothers took such care So Lord, this is why we place the glass here. And this is where the knife goes. And the reason you put the serrated edge in is for this reason. And you know, one of the things I've tried to share with you is those teachable moments when I'm dressing up for church, when hopefully I'm doing it with the right mindset, which is not to be seen as perfect, but to show that I care, to show that when I've tried to share with you my ideas about dressing up for church. It's one of the little human ways that I can say, God, you're different. You deserve an elevation. Now, do I know that God will meet me where I'm at if I go in a pair of jeans? He's still going to be there? Well, yeah, I know that. But if I can do something different, if I can model and show that I think that this is a special moment, that worship is elevated for me when I do that, then I want to engage that way. But not if it becomes an unhealthy pursuit where I'm, which I've definitely been in.
Yeah.
Constantly, you and I joke, there's certain things where I'm always, pulling at the waist or doing this or whatever. And I'm like, okay, what is going on? T, I loved your question. What are you running from? What is it what are you trying to cover up? What are you,
Right.
And then I'm like, oh man, I'm worried about this. Well, let that go. Can you let that go? Is it really, really that important? Or sometimes I'll literally be like, you know what? If I wear this, I'm going to constantly be, so I'll just take it off and try again and put on a different outfit. And I'm like, okay, this one I'm not going to do all that with. So it's not what you wanted to wear, Lori, but it's okay. Because in this one outfit, whatever it is, you're not going to be consumed with the little nitpicky perfectionisms that I can get caught up in. And so I'm learning to kind of try to embrace some of that and be okay when I don't look perfect and I don't look like I just stepped off the cover of Time magazine.
So it's the meaning we give things.
Yes.
So sometimes we might be trying to be perfect, especially like, setting a place. You're honoring your ancestors and the generations that have come before, but sometimes it's also because we all do this. We all have a public self and a personal self, and there's degrees within, and the people in our tightest inner circle are going to see our inner self. And then they'll get to see all the other selves too, because they're in that inner circle. But as you go out of that, out into your outer circles, you're going to want to give a certain look. And we do that without thinking about it. It's not, most of the time, it's not like planning, um, this person may or may not see me. I may or not run into these people. So I better put my hair a certain way, or something like that. We don't exactly think like that, but that's, if we dig down, that's what's happening. And because I'm certainly not going to go to the grocery store in my absolute PJs, right? I say I do, but it's usually just because they're soft, comfy pants and a t-shirt. I will hopefully have brushed my hair to some degree, because that bedhead in the morning, I don't necessarily need the people at the grocery store to see, right? So,
Right.
When I go through the checkout line and the checkout lady is like, how's your day? She doesn't mean it. It's not a sincere question. She doesn't really want to know how your day is. So you have a public answer. You have an answer that you give in public. Now, if my friend calls me up and say, hey, how's it going? I may be more likely to say, today sucks. Let me tell you about it. Because it is a personal, not public.
Yes. Yes.
So we always try to put our best foot forward. And it always is a horrible word because I actually see more and more people showing up in the grocery store in highly inappropriate pajamas, unfortunately, or go to a Walmart. I mean, really, but
I call it Wally World for a reason.
yeah. But most people, when they go out in public, they're putting their quote unquote best foot forward, or what they want the world to see.
Yeah.
So when we're setting a table a certain way and doing things a certain way, that's a good question to ask. And I'm just picking on the sitting table because that's what you guys are talking about. But, it's a good question to ask. Why am I doing this? Am I hiding? And I bring that out to you, Lori, because I know sometimes you hide behind that, right?
Oh,
That's you have a very set way you want the world to see you. You let people you love and care about in past that. And so we see a different side. And so sometimes you'll talk about these, these certain ways you have to have things. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
Right.
But
Lori's obsessed with that.
right. But that's not the Lori I always know.
Right.
Right. So I think that's a factor too.
Yeah. Well, and that even leads to a question that we had in our notes for this first section was, do we get caught up with how others see us? When we're striving for perfection. And I like, yeah, a lot of people do. I know I say I don't care a lot, and it's not that I don't care, it's that I've figured what is I want to be real and realistic, and I'm not one of those that likes to I don't dress up, and I have always lived on the whole take me for what I am, because I want people to see the real me and I don't want to hide. But I'm sure that attitude also is it is a mask for other things, because I obviously everybody has insecurities, um and again, another question we had is, are we allowing us to be defined by our good deeds or badges of busyness? um there's people, like when I was in Tacoma, I was doing a lot. A sister would call because she needs a ride home from work, or somebody needed a ride to church, or yeah, I would work it out and make it happen. And I'm doing it here too. And Lori and I talk a lot. I was like, man, this today was busy, or man, this happened, or it's been crazy and chaotic. And sometimes we can let those things go, even though they're good, helping other people. Sometimes so we can, I don't know, hide or kind of put away the other stuff that's going on, and we're not dealing with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, how many times have you revised that book?
Yeah, no, I was gonna get there. Yeah, no, that's true. But okay, so then, yeah, that's something I have to stop and think about. Is this correction that I'm going to revise a detriment to the book? And so I have to make that decision. Is it worthwhile to change? The other day I was thinking, you know what? This book was written during a time where I did it during NaNoWriMo. I want to give a shout out to that because I feel like that's important to me. So I went ahead and I made the decision to do that. And I know that, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I was literally just thinking about, during this writers conference we went to, it was one of the classes that you didn't take, Lori. It was from a gal who does editing. And she had reached out to some of her editor friends and asked, what are like the top 3 things you want your clients to know? And the number one on the list of the top 10 that she got was, your editor is not perfect. They will make mistakes. And I really appreciated that, because so many people feel like you send it to the editor and everything's going to come back polished, prim and proper, and diamonds and sparklies and everything. And then you get back and you flip through to the first 5 pages and you got, well, that was a mistake and that was spelled wrong. And it's like, well, what did this editor do? Why did I just pay $500 to have this done and it's still mistakes? Because we're not perfect. But these, some authors hold their editors to this really high standard because you can't make a mistake because I'm paying you thousands of dollars to do this. But we're only two eyeballs, and we may have a team, one or two people that may also look over our shoulder as we're doing the work. But I was like, I really appreciated that, because I'm like, I think a friend of yours that had read the book or was reading it had messaged you a few things that she'd seen in the first few pages. First off, the one thing you mentioned, I couldn't even find in the book. And the other one, I had apparently, since that one was printed, I had already fixed it because I must have found it when I went through it another time. And at some point, I just have to say, okay, this is it. I went through the acknowledgements. I put as many people in it as I could to give shout outs to family, friends. And I'm like, yes, there were people that I went back and added because I'm like, oh yeah, why did I not put that person in there? But again, I had to make a decision. Is it a perfection thing I'm going for, or is it for something else? And realize that it's a self-published book. Aside from a few friends like Lori and a few others reading it beforehand, I did it by myself. That's the whole point of self-publishing. And yes, I could have paid somebody to, edit it and all that stuff. I'm like, I wanted to be this raw book. That was what I wanted to put out. And I think after the third or fourth draft, I think it did really well. Or, I like it. I'm happy with where it's at. But that doesn't mean that, 6 months from now, somebody might not message me and say, hey, did you realize that you used somebody's completely different name or something? And of course, something like that, I might have to go change. And there's a character in the book that's of Native American heritage. And I made a comment about something specific of that. And I'm like, okay, well, I just found out that tribe doesn't call them spirits, they call them something else. And I'm like, okay, now I need to figure out what exactly it would be said, because I want to make sure that's honoring that and not just what I don't know what you want to call it, the whitewashed Native American knowledge. I wanted to honor that tribe, and not in a just, oh, I just picked it because. Yeah. So that may be a change I have to make, but I would do it because I feel like that's an important change to make, not because I feel like it has to be perfect.
So it's interesting that you said that, because the one thing, and this is again where I said earlier, I'm really good at setting others up for grace and imperfections. But one of the things that I would tell it's the one thing I told every single bride and groom. It's not if, it's when. There will be things that will happen. There will be mistakes made. Flower girls and ring bearers are going to run off and cry, and food's going to get dropped, food's not going to be delivered, flowers are going to be messed up, like, your photographer's going to capture somebody picking their nose. I don't know. Like, these things are going to happen. And I tell every bride and groom, my job, what you hire me to do, is to respond to those things and hopefully solve or fix or smooth them over as best as possible, but they're going to happen. And I promise you, 5, 10, 15 years down the line, you're actually going to be laughing at those things. They're going to be the memories that you made, that you're like, remember when Uncle Joe with the blah, blah, blah and messed up the toast, and, right. And they will be the things that stand out. They will be the things that you laugh about and, end up creating context to a time within your life. And so I'm sure that's kind of our transition into, so what do we do? How do we learn how to embrace being, if we can't attain perfection, being imperfectly perfect? Because we are miraculously made. I shared this poem that I wrote it was really powerful for me. I am enough.
Yeah.
And just to say those words out loud is massive growth for me. That I could feel like I'm enough. That I could feel I don't have to please somebody or say it in a certain way or do it in a certain way or anything. That there's no, the creator that made me wants me to love him, and he's going to love me unconditionally.
Yeah.
All the warts and the flaws and the things, right, that make me who I am, with all of the gifts and the talents and the things that he's given me. And that's the perfection, right? Not that it is perfect, but that we can allow it to not be perfect, right?
Yeah.
So I went to the conference that I've spoken about now a couple of times. And at this conference, I went to a, a session on being imperfectly perfect. And she was talking about sunflowers. There's this amazing phenomenon with them. So, and realistically, like you think about the rose, right? Or you think about a violet or an iris, but sunflowers they're a little rough. They're not gentle to the touch, They kind of a little prickly. The seeds fall all over. There's no rhyme or reason to them, right? Brown, not the best color. I mean, you get the sunshine, right? You get the yellow. But it's not a perfect flower. It's not, you don't go, oh, it's a sunflower. Most people don't. But one of the phenomenons is a sunflower starts its day where the sun comes up. And throughout the day, the sunflower is moving little by little all the time. What do you think it's doing? It's following the sun. We as believers, what are we supposed to be focused on? The cross, our Heavenly Father.
Right.
What does it say in Matthew? Focus on these things, right? Well, that's Philippians. But Matthew says that if we put the kingdom first, everything else will follow after. Sunflowers are all about one thing.
Right.
With all of those imperfections and all of the things, stay focused. And then everything else follows after. And I feel like I love it. I've got a little sticker now on the back side of my tablet, and it's "You are my sunshine." And I've really been trying to embrace that and to be like, God, if I could just keep my focus here, then I don't need to pursue unattainable, unrealistic perfection. I can just live life. I can still bring you glory. I can still bring you honor with all of the imperfections. I can still say, I'm enough. I'm okay. And you're going to help me throughout the day get enough sun, get the water that I need, provide all of those basic needs. And the rest is just going to follow after. And that's why I really wanted to talk about this idea of being imperfectly perfect. Because that's the perfection. That's the balance that we're seeking. And that's what I feel like when I'm trying to get behind some of these masks and these suffocating mantles that I've placed upon myself with the help of others sometimes, but still place them there and let them stay there. How do I unencumber myself? How do I get behind the mask? How do I be raw and authentic and transparent and real and still find beauty and still find glory and honor and praise? And that's what I'm definitely trying to do.
So I like to live by a quote. This quote kind of reminds me of how my mentality works. And it's Bob Ross, happy little accident. That's what I am.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
what I do all day long. Happy little accidents.
I love it.
The other thing I think of is how many recipes and foods do we eat that happen by accident?
Some of the best.
So, I mean, like yogurt. Who would have thought of yogurt? That happened by accident. It happened because bacteria was getting in the milk. Someone decided to try it and decided they might be able to do something with that. I mean, when you think about it, like, yeah, I don't know that I would try that, but there's so many things that we eat and we make if you think about what's being put into it, it's like, who thought to put these things together, right? Who thought to ferment something?
I think my roommate asks me that all the time. Where did you think to put that with that?
Right. But you put it together and it's like, why wasn't it always together? And so, but just so many things happen. Pot stickers. Pot stickers happened by accident. They were making dumplings and it stuck to the pot. And they didn't have time to make more, so they served it to the emperor anyway. And
Yeah.
it became a food.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. We needed that room.
Yeah. So we've talked about imperfections. So how can we work on our imperfections? If we're concerned about being perfect in certain areas, how can we tackle it? And we have a little bit of a list. We can, Lori, T, you guys can add on. I'll just read what we have here so far. So engaging grief recovery. Because a lot of times, I know for me, sometimes my perfection desires come out when I'm stressing out about, things I've lost, family members, friends, things like that. Seek life coaching. Not be afraid to ask your friends, your family, and professionals, hey, what areas can I work on? Or where am I striving to be perfect that I don't need to be? Like, how can I work on that? Again, therapy. You can also listen to podcasts and listen to other people that are going through the same stuff, talk about how they're impacted or dealing with it. Read books, go to book clubs, get to know people. Have quiet times if you're faithful and you want to read the Bible. Mindfulness and meditation. All of these can be a part of that. We don't want to burn out. So sometimes it might mean setting some boundaries and saying no to something. I know Lori, you brought up Ecclesiastes 7, excuse me. The end of a matter is always better, but you don't get there without the beginning and the middle. I recently had a lesson on, how to write a book, and somebody was teaching this aspect of, NaNoWriMo. I shared a little while ago, or might be in the last episode, that, it's 50,000 words in a month. So the only way you can get to that 50,000 is, where you're going to start, or how you're going to start, with who. It's like, is it your character? Do you know the setting? Do you know something? And then where do you want to be at 50,000 words? To get to the end, you need to know about where you want to be at 25,000 words. And then in between the 0, the 25, and the 50, where do you want to be in those other gaps? Like, how far along do you want to be? And it really kind of gave me a perspective. It was like, I can't know the ending until I start somewhere. And then once I know the ending, then I can start to piece together where I want to be with the rest of the things. And so I think that's a really good help for just looking at it. Like, I have to know where I'm starting, and that's right now. Where do I want to be? Well, I don't want to be as bogged down by feeling like I need to be perfect in these areas of my life. So how do I get there? What do I need to do to seek the help to get to that point?
Well, I know one of the biggest takeaways for me from that session that I went to, and what I really did try to embrace on that trip, there were two takeaways. She talked about getting out and chasing waterfalls and rainbows. Just go for it.
Mhm.
What is it Nike says? Just do it. You know, sometimes it's just the process of doing something, engaging in a different way, letting something go, you know. And then for me, like, I know you just talked about how there's just kind of a beginning and end in the middle. But for me, the best thing that I took away was I'm trying to embrace and learn how to be a passenger with no roadmap.
Right. Amen. That's another good one.
For me, life has been absolutely needing the map, depending upon the map, not being able to move without the map. And God is asking me right now, Lord, I want you to get comfortable with no map. Nope, you don't know what road you're going to be on. You don't. This is where I want you faithfully to be. This is where I am. It's not for everybody, but for me, I really am trying to embrace no longer having a map per se, not knowing what road I'm going to be on, not knowing the next turn or what's going to happen, just going for it. So that's kind of
All the things you will see.
Right.
Yeah, the places you'll go, as Dr. Seuss would say.
So I have two things written down. So I'm going to call them the two R's. The first one is redefine. I always come back to that.
Yeah.
Why are we defining it as perfection?
Good question.
Why? I mean, it's not possible. So why do we define it, whatever it is, as perfection? Maybe better, maybe doing our best, or maybe acceptance, or, so if we're having to use the word perfect, or we are always feeling like we're failing, it might be time to sit back and redefine some things. And to follow that up with the other R is be realistic.
Yep. Amen.
Aim for the stars, but be realistic.
What was that? Yeah, there's that saying about shooting for the moon and then you land among the stars.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, shoot for the moon and then you'll end up among the stars. Yeah. I love that saying.
Yeah,
it's
I
good
like
to
that.
have big dreams. It's good to have big goals. It's good to have all those things. And what you were describing with the beginning, middle, and end is something I often teach clients is there are steps to get there.
Yep.
And so it's really good to have goals. All right, now we know what those are. Let's bring it back though, and let's look at the next thing. What's the barrier? What can you do to get around the barriers? What's this? But look at the next thing and do it, knowing that that's what your goal is, but you're heading that direction. And let's be realistic. One of the techniques and activities we can do in therapy is brainstorming, right? And we're talking brainstorming, the ridiculous included. Let's laugh about what we think we can do, or what could be some ideas to get where we're wanting to go. But we're going to brainstorm every possibility. Then we start knocking off the unrealistic stuff. Okay, that was funny to put on there. I'm going to shoot for the moon. Yeah, I'm going to get in a rocket and go. All right, that's not realistic. We're going to take that off. And then we start ordering, what can I do? What works for me? And there's something on the list that will work.
Right.
So redefining and being realistic.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. Thanks, ladies, once again.
Yep.
Embracing that imperfection and getting behind the masks. I love it. Thanks for doing it with me.
Just a friendly reminder that anything discussed in this podcast is not to be used as a diagnosis or a replacement for conversations with your own doctors, therapists, psychologists, or other medical professionals. This episode is on YouTube and most major podcast platforms. If you're not a subscriber, we'd love for you to be one, so don't forget to like and click the subscribe button on YouTube to keep up with our upcoming episodes. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads as Behind the Mask PC. You can also email feedback or future episode ideas to us at behindthemaskpc@gmail.com. To find us, EJ, Lori, and T online, links for us will be in the description of this episode. And on behalf of the ladies and myself, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye!